What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here, and this video is going to kill two birds with one stone. Someone asked me how I do my PGA research, and someone else asked me to show them how to use the tools on my website for this PGA season. So I can do both of those videos at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through essentially my research process, and I'm going to show you how the tools work on my website, which is dfsondemand.com, just so you can see what is here and available for you. So let's hop right into it. You know, this is my website. It's dfsondemand.com. When I've updated for the current week, you'll see the tournament name will be here. So this week it's the Century Tournament of Champions. It's the first event of the calendar year on the PGA Tour. So once that's been updated, I change the button so that you know that it's available. And then here are basically the tools that you're going to have access to. The tutorial that I'm recording right now will be down here at the bottom. And then I've got a cheat sheet, game logs, player profile. The one and done tool, that's new. I probably won't cover that in this video. I have another video for it. Tour stats, and then course history. So we'll just go through these one by one here, and I'll open them up just so that I have them on different tabs. All right, so here we go. So here is the cheat sheet. And what you'll notice is I'll load in everyone who's in the field here on the left-hand side, along with their salary. I have their Vegas odds, how many DraftKings points they're averaging this season. And then this is where it starts to get a little interesting, and it needs a little bit of explanation. So these are recent tournaments. So from the left-hand side, that's the RSM Classic. That was the last PGA event before this one. The OHL Classic was before that, going all the way back to the Safeway Open, which was the first event of the swing season. So I usually have the last 8 PGA events here. Sometimes I'll do worldwide events, like if it's a WGC, kind of different. So the most recent on the left, going back each week to the right-hand side. And then I have each player's finishing position. So I can use this to easily say, okay, well, Dustin Johnson finished in a second place at the WGC, or Kevin Kisner finished 4th place, you know, the last time he teed it up, which was the RSM Classic. So looking for recent form for these types of players. So the purple section is just the core stats that I use. But moving forward, I've actually am developing something where I can see, depending on each course, what stats we should look at, and I'll try to add those here. So just so you can easily go through and see, okay, if this week I need someone who's going to make a lot of birdies, you know, Justin Thomas 25.8 birdie or better. And any of these columns are sortable, so you could go through and see, you know, strokes gained putting, who's a poor putter, who's a great putter. You could do the same thing for the odds. This is a really nice way to see discrepancies between the DraftKings scoring and the odds that are available. So Cam Smith, you can see, pretty much underpriced because he's the same odds to win as Brian Harman, and he's $1,100 cheaper. So very easy way to identify that. And then the red columns are finishing position for the last 4 years at this tournament. So you can see Jordan Spieth, 1st place, it's 2nd place, and a 3rd place in the 3 times that he's played this. If it's blank, they didn't play that year. So it's when you start to look at this, it's very easy to go through and identify players who are in good recent form over here in the blue columns, and then have had good course history over here on the right-hand side in red. And then on the far right, I've just got you know, the past champions, and then everyone in the field for how many DraftKings points they've averaged here at this tournament. So you'll see I've included the number of starts because some of these guys have only played it 1, 2, or 3 times because it is you know, an invitation only. It's a tournament of champions. So I list how many starts they have there just so you can get an idea of everyone in the field and how many DraftKings points that they've scored. Moving over to the game logs, this one's pretty straightforward, but I still kind of like it. If you prefer the raw data, there's a lot of different things you can do here. It's literally the game logs. The tournament, the course, how many yards, the par, where a player finished, and how many of, you know, birdies and eagles and pars they made, and then their DraftKings scoring. I have European, stats in here. I've got PGA Tour events. You can use the date range to sort by specific dates. So you can come in here and say, okay, only give me the last, 6 months. If you want to look for a specific player, we can type in any player and do Jordan Spieth, and we can see his game log. So here's his game logs from May 19th. We can go back, we can add more, we can go all the way back to the start of October. Obviously, we can, sort on any of these, right? So if we want to say what were Jordan's best DraftKings games, here they are, which is a little cut off on my screen. You can do that. You can also choose multiple players here. So here's a cool little thing. If you hold control on a PC, it's command on a Mac, I think. You can select multiple players. So I can do, here's Koepka and Jordan Spieth, and I can see what they've done. Okay. If I want to look at a specific tournament, I can also do that. So maybe I want to see the Masters. And actually that's listed as a major. So here's the Masters. I can sort by just the Masters. Or sometimes it might be worth it just to look at specific courses. Quail Hollow is an example of this because it has hosted the PGA Championship, and it's also hosted other events. So we can go do Quail Hollow. Now, what I have loaded in here right now is just since the start of 2016. I have basically everything back to like 1980. I need to load that in. It just takes time to do it. I need to do that and get that up and running so we can look at multiple years of history here. It's definitely on my list and it's coming up. And then I also have the ability for you to download these game logs. So you can actually click this link right here and it'll download to a CSV file in your browser and you can have these. That's going to be tough to do when I add more tournaments because there's going to be so much data here. It's going to be difficult to constantly export that all the time. So that's why I'm kind of taking my time to load it into the system. But pretty cool to be able to go through and check players' game logs as they've especially over time, which is also something that the player profile does really well. So, we can go back to our Jordan Spieth example. And, I suggest you can only really choose one player at a time here. If you choose two, it kind of gets a little wonky and you're not getting the right information anymore. But we'll do Jordan Spieth. And here's a better visual. So these columns are DraftKings points. If I hover over it, I get more information. I can see, a third place finish at the Sony, a ninth place at the Waste Management. The red tournaments are ones that the player has missed the cut on. So I thought that was a nice visual to be able to quickly identify how often a player is making cuts. Who would be a good person who's missed some cuts and played a lot of tournaments? Brian Harman doesn't miss a lot of cuts, but he plays a lot. So here you go. His chart is a little more full, and then you can zoom into any of these, which is kind of interesting. So if I go to like this focus mode, you'll see it zooms me in here, and then I can go back to the report. So I mean, definitely click around. Like if you click on certain things, it changes the report. So definitely feel free to click around and try to break this. But we'll go back to Spieth. And you can see, if you really wanted to see how he's done in just majors, you could do that. If you wanted to see how he's done, everywhere, you could uncheck these, right, and get everything, or you could click them both. Okay. If you have a player who, maybe one of the Molinari brothers might be good for this. Does he have Euro? Okay, so he has Euro starts, and he has PGA starts, and he has major starts. So you could do all three of these and get everything for him, which is kind of interesting. You could sort just by tournament, just by date range like we did in the past, and then I'll go back to that Spieth example just because I think it's the cleanest. Yeah, I'll just do this. Hold on. Clear out my options here. Here we go. And then I've got, so these are sorted by most recent finish down here on the left hand, if you want just a quick look at Jordan Spieth's most recent finishes, and then his best finishes, and then how many average DraftKings points he's averaging. And then, if you adjust this timeline, it's going to adjust everything, right? So, since April 19th, he's averaging 77.5 DraftKings points. More recently, let's get some actual starts in there. If we go to July, it's 87.5. So feel free to play around with this. And then the last couple, so course history is always really popular. So I've got this queued up for the Tournament of Champions right now. So any of the, the past names, the Hyundai Tournament of Champions or the SBS Tournament of Champions, you can go through and see all the game logs here for each player. You could search for a specific player. So maybe I want to see Brooks Koepka at the Tournament of Champions. Well, he's only played once. If I clear this out, I mean, this is access to every event on any tour since 2008. So, for example, I mean, you've got the Abu Dhabi stuff in here. Let's do something like, what would be a good one? What has a lot of stuff? Well, I guess we could do I don't want to do the Masters. Let's do the Memorial. That's been around a while. So here's all the game logs for every player since, or not game logs, but results and course history. So I can see that Jordan Spieth is averaging 76 DraftKings points at the Memorial in all years. Now, if we click Jordan Spieth, I will get his results. Okay, pretty nice there. If I click Matsuyama, I'll get his results. The number on the right-hand side is how many times they've started this tournament, how many starts they have. So Jason Duffner's played it 6 times. If I click on him, I get his 6 finishes. If you notice, I have this defaulted to just players in the field this week, which is why I had it teed up for the Tournament of Champions. If you remove that, here's everyone who's ever played the Memorial since 2008. So I can click on Kuchar and get his results by year. Maybe I want to look at only specific years. Like maybe I only want to see who succeeded in even number years. I don't know why you'd want to do this, but it's available to you. Sometimes this comes in handy for course rotations. Like if the same course has not been used for all years of an event, you could go back and just click the years that it was used. That's why I have this in here. And you can see, okay, oh, Patrick Reed, well, he only played it 1 time in those years, but he had an 8th place finish. Okay. Or Schwartzel's played it 3 times, and here's his finishes. So this is pretty handy to go back and look at course history. And then you'll always have the option when available. So I don't load the field in until DraftKings salaries come out. So when those are available, I'll load the field in, and then you can say, okay, just show me guys who are actually playing this week. But yeah, pretty handy little tool there. And then finally, I've got tour stats. So this is something that will be evolving pretty heavily. So here in the left hand, so let me start up in the right hand side. Again, I have just players in the field this week starting here, but you could remove them and do any tournament range that you want here. You could choose any player. But my goal for this is to kind of give you, show you players who are running hot recently. So you can come in here and just see, okay, maybe I want everyone on tour, since April. Here's the most DraftKings points per tournament and how many times they've teed it up. So Paul Casey, 11 starts, 79 DraftKings points, obviously really impressive. Austin Cook has 80, but he's only played 4 events. Down here, it's per round scoring. So I actually did that when, what was it? FanDuel had the first and second round, and then the third and fourth round were different. So I had this in here. It's interesting to look at. You can scroll through and see how players do in each round, but that might be going away at some point. But this one's really cool. This is probably my favorite, and I'll make it bigger. This is a mean and standard deviation chart, and I get the most questions about this. And all it's showing you is average DraftKings points per event based on your filters, and then the line is the standard deviation of DraftKings results. The way that I use this is very important. It's to determine between cash players or cash game players and GPP players. So let's look at this for example. Paul Casey is averaging 79 DraftKings points. Jordan Spieth is averaging 79 DraftKings points. Those are, on paper, the same player, right? Like, oh, they're both averaging 79 DraftKings points. However, Paul Casey's standard deviation is only 11, one of the lowest on tour, making him very, very consistent. Players with a smaller standard deviation are very consistent. Jordan Spieth, on the other hand, a 30 standard deviation is much more volatile. Now, granted, standard deviation might not be the perfect calculation for this, because if Jordan Spieth goes nuts and scores a ton of DraftKings points, that does make him, quote, more volatile and will increase his standard deviation. But the point is there. So you'll see when you start going through this, Paul Casey, obviously a very consistent player, someone you might want to use in cash games. Sergio Garcia, incredibly consistent, someone you might want to use in cash games. Chesson Hadley, 34 standard deviation, very, very volatile. He might score 100 DraftKings points and he might score 30 DraftKings points. That's the type of GPP player that you want. So when you start looking through this, you'll notice, you know, guys that fit these molds, like Brendan Steele, very volatile. The standard deviation bears that out. Ches Reavie, very consistent. The standard deviation bears that out. So when you're trying to decide between certain players, depending on the format of your game, I love this chart. It's not perfect, but you know, nothing is, but this is really kind of a handy tool to help you make decisions in who you should roster for specific contests. And then finally, this is something I talked about on the Century Tournament of Champions preview video, and it's something I'm going to get a lot more into this year. And not to get too crazy about it right now, but what I'm doing is I've gathered all of the stats for every player, like driving distance, driving accuracy, strokes gained approach. Like I'm talking like 180 stats for every player since 2008. What I'm doing with that is then I'm comparing those numbers to DraftKings results, because I also have all the game logs from 2008 and I have all the DraftKings points. And I'm trying to see, based on each tournament and really based on each course, which stats are most important. So I'm running regression models, seeing what correlates. So we will find courses where driving distance correlates to DraftKings success. Long courses, right? You know, we will find these types of things. So what I did this week for the Century Tournament of Champions is I ran this, and the stats here that you're seeing are the 5 most important stats. A lot of them are birdie or better stats because you're going to need to make so many birdies at this event, right? Like Jordan Spieth won this event minus 31 or something like that. So you're going to need to make a lot of birdies. It's the easiest course on tour this year. And then putting of 10 feet or more actually popped up. So just to kind of tell you what we were doing in the past is, you know, a lot of us do is we guess, right? We say, okay, it's a long course. How about driving distance? It's the US Open and the rough is really thick. I think driving accuracy is important. And those were smart, educated guesses, but we were still guessing. When you're running models and looking back and actually finding correlation between these things, it's not guessing. There might be a small sample size that makes the data more inaccurate, but it's not guessing. It's literally looking to see which stats are impacting or are correlating with DraftKings points per each course. So we could talk about that for like 5 more hours. That's the very, very high view of it. And that's what this page is showing. And then I just have some charts so that you can kind of go through and look. So, you know, birdie average, which is how many birdies you make in a round. Obviously that's going to pop up probably pretty often. I just made a chart to show you and to help find players that stick out. So Brooks Koepka sticks out because he makes 4.2 birdies per round and he's only $9,400. That's in theory better than Jon Rahm, who is slightly more expensive at $9,500 and only makes 4.1 birdies per round. So guys on the bottom right are better here. Grayson Murray makes a lot of birdies compared to similar priced players like Johnny Vegas. He doesn't make a lot of birdies compared to Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas, but he makes a lot of birdies compared to his peers in his price range. So that's what this chart is showing you. It's a visual to be able to identify these players easily, and then I'll have a visual for each one of these different stats that are going to pop up. This is where it's going to start to get really complex, and there's going to be a lot of tweaking over the course of the year, and there's going to be a lot of tweaking to a lot of these tools over the course of the year, mostly because of feedback from you guys. So please don't hesitate to reach out. It's at DFS On Demand on Twitter, or leave a comment below. You can go to the website and email me. Let me know what you want to see. But these are the tools that I use and the process that I go through for research. And I hope you enjoyed that. And talk to you guys soon. See ya.